He's Joe Thomas, Browns offensive tackle. Busy man here, but kind enough to join us. Joe, let me start with that question we just talked about. Would you be in favor of a national law that prohibits contact in football until you're 14?
Like at the federal level?
Well, state by, every state has to follow this.
I guess I've never thought of it, but I'm not in favor generally of having the state making laws about the games of football. I think maybe it could be a good idea if individual groups of football teams get together and decide that that's what's best for our organization. But I would prefer that to come from a grassroots level, at the county level, or within different football organizations.
But what if it was a county vote? Let's say it's a local vote. Would you be okay with something like that for your kids?
Yeah, I'd be okay with that. I think flag football is a great way to get a lot of different people involved in the game of football. I think it gets a lot of girls involved with football at a young age. And I'd be okay with waiting until you're 14 to play tackle football.
All right, a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about. Are you recruiting Drew Brees right now?
I'm not. I am not currently recruiting him. I've met him a few times at the Pro Bowls, but I'm just making a point. I think that the Browns aren't too far off, and there's a lot of good quarterbacks that could become available, and nobody really knows what's inside Drew Brees' head and what he feels is best for him in the next season.
What if Drew said, I'll play for the Browns, Joe, but you got to be my left tackle for for a few more years? How about 3 years for each? Would you sign up?
Can we give him my number? Do you want me to text him my number and then you can have him call me?
I can reach out to Drew. Now, this isn't against you're not. He's a free agent. You're allowed to reach out to him.
But I'm sure you have his number,
yes.
Unlike me.
Oh, you
You're
don't have his number.
Radio host here. I don't have his number. I'm just a lowly left tackle.
Fritzy, would you, when we get ready to hang up, would you give Joe the number for Drew Brees?
Sure.
Okay. Right. We'll try to help you out there. Now, it was a year ago when I asked the following question to Joe Thomas of the Cleveland Browns on what to do with that number 1 overall pick. Here is Joe's answer.
And I would say you want to go defense. I think you need to get a pass rusher. I think you got to be careful reaching for a quarterback at number 1 because if they fail, they don't help your team at all. Whereas if you pick a defensive lineman and maybe they don't live up to the hype, you can still find a place to get them on the field and to have an impact. And we're a team that we need guys that can come in and that can start and that can contribute. And I think that's the risk of taking a quarterback.
All right. Same question this year, Joe. What do you do with that number 1 overall pick?
Great question. I think that was a pretty good take for me last year. I think we were pretty happy with Myles Garrett. I think he's proven to be quite the good player out there for us.
Yes.
Yes, I think it really depends on what the Browns do in free agency, and clearly there's been a lot of speculation that we'll trade for Alex Smith. I think if that happens, you have to take a quarterback, either 1 or 4. But if we go out and we do something like we sign Kirk Cousins or one of those younger quarterbacks, then I don't think you have to take a quarterback at number 1 or number 4, and you can sit there and just take the best player available at 1 and at 4. Or you could even trade back a couple spots and let one of those quarterback teams skip you, draft a quarterback, and then pick up an extra first-round pick.
Okay, wait a minute. You didn't say we. When at first when you were talking about the Browns, you said the Browns, not we, in what they should do. What are you telling us, Joe? Are you going to be with the Browns next year?
Well, here's what I'm telling you. I'm telling you I got the number 2 podcast right now on iTunes in the sports category called The Tomahawk Show. And as an unbiased media member now that I'm in my podcast, I try to sometimes separate myself from being just a homer fanboy from the Cleveland Browns.
All right, I like that. And you're partnered with A.J. Hawk.
Andrew Hawkins, but they're both Hawkins. Oh. It's pretty close.
I got some bad information here.
Ooh, he's fired.
All right, well, it's somebody named Hawk, and you came up with the Tomahawk. So, boy, imagine if you had A.J. Hawk. That would have been even better. You'd be the number 1 podcast there.
Yes. I don't know. Andrew Hawkins, he's pretty talented. I'm pretty comfortable with my co-host, but I do love A.J. Hawk as well, and maybe we can give him on our show at some point. I think he's got a show on Sirius as well.
All right, what if the Browns decide to take a tackle? Let's say number 4 in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's smart. I think I'm 33 years old, and no matter what I decide to do in 2018, I don't have too many more seasons left under my belt, so they got to start thinking about the future of that position, whether it be this year or the following year, and I think that'd be a very savvy move.
Johnny Manziel talking about maybe going to the CFL. I saw where he's got some gear that he's trying to sell, and you tweeted out that maybe you'd be interested in, I think, Lost in the Sauce hat that he has there. Do you really want Johnny Manziel gear, swag?
I do. I'm a big fan of free swag, and I love the dad jokes. I love the dad hats, and that looks like it would fit my personality perfectly.
Do you think he's going to get a chance in the CFL?
I don't see why he wouldn't. I think he's done a good job positioning himself, kind of putting out the message that he's a changed person, he's really committed to football, and he's ready to kind of start towards the bottom there in the CFL and work his way back into the NFL. And I think a team would be smart to give him an opportunity because he definitely has the ability, and it's just him being able to show a team that he's got the commitment level where it needs to be an NFL quarterback.
Could you have given him advice when he first got to Cleveland that would have helped him, that he would have listened?
I'm not sure. I mean, he had a lot of good people around him giving him advice, and it didn't seem to completely work. And I'm not sure. I wonder. I would love to ask him. I think we're trying to get him on our podcast and maybe have some of those in-depth questions about what could have been done differently so that he did have a successful career in Cleveland.
The Browns lost to the Vikings in Week 8, lost to the Jags in Week 11. How good are those defenses?
Well, I think they're the two best defenses in the NFL, and that's not going out on a limb. But I actually think the Jags' defense is probably a little bit better. I think their front four is a little bit more dominant and a little bit more difficult to deal with.
Yeah, when you look at, Calais Campbell, I remember when Calais Campbell went to Jacksonville, people were like, dude, why would you go to Jacksonville and, disappear there? And then he's going to be up for Defensive Player of the Year.
No doubt. The way I see the Jaguars from a few years ago is kind of where I see the Browns right now. We've got a ton of cap space. We've got an owner that wants to spend the money, just like with the Jaguars. And I think we can put together a great defense just like the Jaguars did by spending the money and getting those marquee guys like the Calais Campbells.
Are you saying Jaguars on purpose? Like, do you really believe that that's how it's pronounced, Joe? I mean, that Wisconsin education, is it Jaguars or Jaguars?
I didn't realize I was saying it any differently.
You said Jaguar.
It's Jaguar?
I think it's Jaguar.
Are you doing this intentionally to try to confuse me? I'm just a simple man from Wisconsin there, Dan.
No, I can't confuse you. We had a problem with this yesterday. We needed to know how to pronounce Jaguar. And then, the English say Jaguar. And then, or Jaguar, and then we heard Jaguars. So then when I thought you were mocking me, I thought you were punking me, Joe. So I was coming at you.
Yes, I've actually never heard this discussion, but I love it. Yeah, I've always said Jaguar.
Hey, here's your podcast with you and AJ Hawk on your podcast. You guys can.
I love it.
Now you got one more year left on your contract?
I do, yes. One more year on my contract. Yep.
All right, and you're definitely playing?
Have not made a decision yet.
What would be the tipping point of why you would or why you wouldn't?
Well, I get asked a lot what's going into my decision, and for me, really, it's just going to come down to my overall health. Do I feel like I'm healthy enough to survive another NFL season? Towards the end of my career, I've had some back injuries and some knee injuries that have been really nagging and difficult to handle, and it's really going to come down to how those feel and if I feel like they're healthy enough to survive another year.
Why is it that we don't talk about linemen getting concussions? It feels like it's quarterbacks, skill position players. You guys are getting hit every single play. Is it because the proximity of those hits with the opposition that maybe you don't get them as often? Or am I being naive?
Well, I think the linemen get the most overall hits to the head out of any position, but you don't get as many of the big knockout punches that, say, a quarterback or a receiver would get where they're laying on the field and they're unconscious. Typically, all of the concussions that I've seen between linemen, you don't even really see them on the ground. They just come to the sideline and they look a little bit confused and they have a hard time explaining what's going on, and then they get checked out for a concussion. Or even the next day, we had a player this year that didn't feel anything during the day. Nobody noticed it, and then it wasn't until the next day that they noticed it. But it's rare because the distance between us is so much shorter than, for instance, a safety hitting a receiver where he's getting a huge running start and coming in with the knockout blow.
What did all of this losing do to your sense of humor?
Hopefully it brought it out, because I think that's the only way to deal with one win in 2 seasons.
But it has to eat you up, Joe, that here you are, people talk about you being a Hall of Famer, and you've gone through more losing seasons than probably any Hall of Famer has.
Well, you hear people talk about the best way to cope with difficult situations, and a lot of times people say humor, and I think that's sort of been my coping mechanism over the years.
Would you trade in the Hall of Fame for a Super Bowl win?
That's a tough question. I mean, clearly Hall of Fame is the pinnacle of personal accomplishment in our sport, and very few people get there. But the Super Bowl is the pinnacle of the team sport. And since I'm not in the Hall of Fame right now, I can easily say that I would rather have a Super Bowl win.
With Drew Brees as your starting quarterback.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll work on that. And then you got the media career coming up, because it's rare to see an offensive lineman in one of these media roles. So, you know, you're going to make your presence felt, I'm going to guess. Is that what you want to do?
Well, it is unusual, but surprising, I would say, since offensive linemen are historically the best-looking guys on the team. So they're the most natural to be in front of a camera yelling at it.
I'd love for you to host this one time. You and A.J. Hawk could co-host this show if you wanted to. And Andrew Hawkins if you wanted to.
Yes, that would be a lot of fun. I would love to do that.
I would love to see you in the chair. Well, I'd have to get a bigger chair, but you and Andrew Hawkins would be fun. Could you beat up?
There's one thing your show needs more is you being on vacation.
That I agree with you. Could you beat up all four of my Danettes? Could you beat up the guys
at the same time?
Yes.
Easily.
When's the last time you were in a fight, Joe?
Boy, it's been a couple years since I've been in a good training camp fight. I would probably say, 2015 maybe.
Who wanted a piece of you?
Oh, it's always offensive and defensive linemen going at it. I think, sometimes there's silly fights over, somebody hitting the guy after the whistle or things like that. Usually just because training camp gets long and hot.
Yeah, but nobody's going to you're like the star quarterback. You're the best player on the team, so they should give you like a red jersey or something that nobody messes with you, right?
Well, usually I'm not practicing enough to actually get in any fights. I'm usually the guy on the sideline running off the sideline to pull people off the pile.
Give us where people can find your podcast with Andrew Hawkins.
Well, the great thing about our podcast is we're nationwide. You can get us on iTunes. You can get us on the Google Play. You can get us on SoundCloud. Anywhere you find a podcast, you'll get The Tomahawk Show.
The Tomahawk Show with Andrew Hawkins, not A.J. Hawk, and Joe Thomas. Joe, enjoy the offseason, and we'll see if we can help you with Drew Brees.
I appreciate that. Thank you for having me on.
All right. Joe Thomas. He's fun. I think he's got a little bit of a future in the media there after he goes to the Hall of Fame. He could do stand-up comedy. I really believe that you could get somebody to write 10 minutes worth and he could do some stand-up comedy there. I think he just did.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.